while Chris brings up the presentation, let me start off first with thanking the Dallas chapter of CIE for this wonderful event and giving me an opportunity to talk at this event. I think Tiger talked about how the power of virtual meetings allowed CIE to host a lot of meetings, and I think that's very true given the transition we all have seen, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. Before I get going, let me talk a little bit about my background, and I think most of it Chris did very well in introducing me with my. I was born and brought up in India. I think the part I will really like to add to that is that I really love engaging with community with the spare time I have outside. And I'm a big fan of coaching soccer teams, coached soccer teams for 15 years in my life, for the last 15 years or so. And it was a very exciting journey. And then the second thing I really like to do more is to really engage myself in STEM education, robotics camps, coaching robotic teams, and also working with the universities and guest lecturing in the STEM classes. I'll tell you, I'm very amazed at the amount of potential robotics teams have and how much innovation those kids bring to that those camps and those competitions every day. The last one, I'll tell you, I'm very passionate about fighting cancer, and I spend a lot of time in awareness as well as helping with research on the cancer side through funds and things like that. So if you can move to the next slide, just looking and reflecting on this pandemic. First, I know, just speaking from my personal experience, I was impacted with it either through friends, family. I have a lot of friends and family back in India, and so I personally really felt it very close to me. And I think all of us felt it, experienced it, and my prayers and hopes are right that we're all doing good, and it'll get us to a better place. And let's be all stay safe. So that's where I'll start off. Now, just thinking about workplace, I'll tell you, right, we all get changes in workplace. And we adapt to those changes in a different pace. But this one, I tell you that Friday evening, we decided we're not going to come to work starting Monday morning. And Monday morning, we were starting to work not from that office where we worked for a long time. That is a huge change. And it happened in a very hurry. And typically, right, we prepare for changes, we think about changes, we think about what we need to do differently, we think about how to teach ourselves. But this change, actually happened very, very fast. And I take a chapter from, Glima talked about the values. I read a line from TI value statement, which talks about that we will adapt and succeed in a world that is changing ever. What a foresight in thinking about that as our values and how to leverage that as we actually had to go into this journey. The one thing I'll tell you, right, the workforce, and it's not just TI for sure, but even if I talk to my peers in the industry, has really risen to the occasion in regards of trying to do their jobs in the most effective fashion with all these changes which have been coming. And people have been leveraging technologies, changing their practices. There was a dialogue around earlier, that how do we collaborate with each other? And I am actually very amazed and actually very pleased, right, that especially at TI, that the workforce has risen to the occasion and actually adopted in this environment. TI is a manufacturing company. I mean, most of you know that, and we do, a lot of manufacturing is done in in a factory, which is a very clean environment, and people have to be in the factory to do that manufacturing. And so we had to actually balance between the manufacturing staff to be on site, while some of the support functions and other functions can work remotely, and how do we collaborate to still keep going. The things, right, I see positively, just at a very high level. One, right, a lot of people actually become conscious of how to operate in a remote environment. Think about, we are a global company. There are a lot of global companies. So I think the engagement between the employees in a virtual environment was always happening. In a global environment, we have employees in India, we have employees in Asia, we have employees in Europe, Japan, everywhere. So that engagement was already happening. But now, right, everybody's become a lot more conscious and a lot more effective on how to work in that type of environment. In addition, right, this remote environment sometimes, for me, especially if I think about it and reflect, there are times when I really want an uninterrupted work environment to make progress on what I want to do. And this gives me a flexibility to do that and actually make a lot more progress without interruption. People have become experts in technologies and how to use technologies to collaborate with each other. And that's huge positive I've seen. Just at a very high level, just thinking about some of the challenges, and I'll talk a little bit more in my subsequent talk here, right? Work-life balance. I can just get off from my bed, and walk into my study and start work. Those lines start to become blurry. In the past, I had to get ready, get in the car, drive to work. So there was a distinction, and then I have to come back. But some of those things are becoming, a lot more together, and we have to be, conscious of that. Sometimes collaboration remotely is challenging. It's becoming a lot more formal than informal. The things we were able to do just by wandering into each other's offices and on the, in the hallways or during lunch, just by eating together and get those things done are now challenging. So I think while, the environment has changed, people have risen to the occasion. I think it has also brought some challenges we all have to think about and handle. If you can move to the next slide, please. Just thinking about the journey and thinking about, right, what has happened in a little more detail. Obviously deploying technologies and making that happen, was a critical thing. We deployed a lot of technologies. We had people learn those technologies. We had people adopt their practices to really so that they can be effective by using those technologies in a virtual environment. I mean, if you think about it, right, people are spending a lot more time on cell phones. People are spending a lot more time on virtual meetings. Again, back to Tiger's comment early in the Zoom. And I mean, the data is amazing. I mean, there's lots and lots of minutes we thought from a technology perspective where people spend on virtual meetings. In the end, right, as we learned, I think we had to think through evolving in those technologies, especially the tools needed for people to collaborate remotely. People had to, the whiteboards, the things where people can just, innovate, collaborate, and work on a whiteboarding environment. And some of those things, right, we went through a learning exercise. We went through, adopting those things slowly. We went through, people innovating and learning best practices and sharing those with each other, especially in terms of adopting those technologies. The other one I tell you is a little challenging, just the world of cybersecurity. You guys hear, a lot of commentary around, ransomware. You thinks about, where people's accounts get hacked. Now that everybody's virtually connected, that creates a little bit of a challenge on how to, get people more aware of it how to get people more conscious of it, and actually, make sure we can work that in a secure environment. Obviously, right, in the end, right, the biggest thing is, how do you actually keep our employees, our families globally safe? Especially in an environment where manufacturing and remote environment, and some on-site presence have to actually coexist. So that was really the thought process in our mind in terms of how to handle that. I think teams have really adopted well. I think teams remain very productive. I think we are starting to think through on what the new norm of evolving into is, and try to think through so that we can still continue to stay effective. If you can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so I think in the end, right, the way where I will kind of take ourselves to think about really is, one, we have learned new technologies, we have learned new expertise, and let us continue to benefit from these, especially in a new norm and hybrid environment. Today, the definition of work is not just office, it's a coffee shop, it's a, I don't know, parents' home, it's a vacation place. So there's lots of things which now become office. And as we think about new norm, right, our challenge still is to think about, how do we get back somewhat of our workforce into the office? Because if you think about the whiteboarding, the collaboration, the informal working together, that culture, right, is very powerful in terms of us innovating and developing solutions. But then, right, commitment to flexibility is here to stay. I think people will think about workforce as a very flexible environment as we look forward, and it's not something new. I mean, I think we're just trying to stretch that to even a higher level. TI, that flexible, hybrid, broad environment has always been there. We have to think about, at times you're working on a critical environment. An isolated, calm, separated time may help us there. Appointments, sometimes even, you have to take care of a family member and you're extendedly staying at home. I think those types of hybrid work environments are really going to be here and are going to become a very new norm for us to all work through it. So in the end, right, what you got to think about is, how do I balance between, the innovation, collaborating together, and while creating a very flexible work environment. I think a couple of things I will stress in the end, and they are probably, when I reflect back, right, they are probably very applicable to the broader environment. Changes and be ready to accept changes is very critical. I think, and I think that will continue to help us, especially with this environment where we went into pandemic, trying to come out of pandemic, and in general in the corporate world. Collaboration and influencing of our peers, our co-workers, right, is critical for our success, and we have to really think through doing that in a hybrid environment. And the last one, right, I think learning always, right, of and innovating with new things so that we can be very successful again in any environment, especially when there's a change in an environment like that. I think I'll end with talking about, right, the need for adopting and succeeding in a world that is changing ever. I think that mantra, that motto is here for us to stay. It's probably even more amplified. And I think we all will have to kind of continue to work with that. With that, I'll probably stop there. And thank you again, CIE Untitled Chapter.